Yashodanandana Gajaganarandana Yamuna Chiravanachari Yamuna Chiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Gajaganarandana Yamuna Chiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Shri Radhe Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Paripajapaya Akvatara Sata Shishima Chila Eti Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jan Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Paripajapaya Akvatara Sata Shishima Chila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Rantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. So we continue reading Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita. This chapter is entitled New Jagannath Puri. Haight-Ashbury's psychedelic shop, a popular hippie gathering place, had extended to Prabhupada many invitations to come and speak. After the mantra rock dance, the hippies there had put a sign in the window, a night of consciousness. Also, in response to the mantra rock dance, they had opened a meditation room in the rear of the store. But since the hippies at the psychedelic shop were almost always intoxicated, Prabhupada's followers had said that it wouldn't be a good idea for Prabhupada to go. But the hippies kept entreating. Finally, the devotees relented, advising Prabhupada that it might be all right for him to go. So one Saturday night, Prabhupada and two devotees walked over to Haight Street to the psychedelic shop. Young people crowded the streets, hippies sitting along the sidewalk selling hashish pipes and other dope paraphernalia, homosexuals, widely costumed hippies with painted faces, small groups smoking marijuana, drinking, singing and playing guitars, a typical evening on Haight Street. At the psychedelic shop, marijuana and tobacco smoke hung heavy in the air, mingling with the smell of alcohol and bodies. Sounds really intense. Prabhupada entered the meditation room, its ceilings and walls covered with madrasas, and sat down. The room was full of hippies, many lying down, heavily intoxicated, looking up at him with half-closed eyes. He spoke in a low voice, but his presence somehow held their attention. Although lethargic, the group was appreciative, and after Prabhupada had finished, those who were still conscious expressed their approval. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We can just see in that, we can just see what Srila Prabhupada went through, for preaching, what he encountered. The most transcendental personality from Vrindavan Dham coming into this environment. Right? Just that smell, bodies, kind of stench mixed with alcohol and drugs, and yet he sits and gives the transcendental message. And even though people like pass out in the audience because they're that intoxicated, still there's some appreciation for Srila Prabhupada. We can't understand, and we can't glorify enough his efforts. It's incredible what he was able to do. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're continuing the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 30, text 35. Yatredyante katamrishtas Krishnaya parasham yata Nirvairam yatra bhuteshu Nodvego yatra kaschana Yatredyante katamrishtas Krishnaya prashamo yata Nirvairam yatra bhuteshu Nodvego yatra kaschana Yatredyante katamrishtas Krishnaya prashamo yata Nirvairam yatra bhuteshu Nodvego yatra kaschana Yatredyante katamrishtas
Krishnaya Nirvairam
Bhuteshu
Nodvego
Kaschana
Yatredyante katamrishtas
Yatredyante katamrishtas
Krishnaya samoyataha
Krishnaya samoyata
Nirvairam yatra bhutesu
Nirvairam yatra bhuteshu
Nodvego yatra kaschana Yatredyante
Krishnaya prasamoyata Nirvairam yatra bhuteshu Word for word. Yatra, where? Idyante, are worshipped or discussed. Tata, words. Mrishta, pure. Trishnaya, of material hankerings. Prashama, satisfaction. Yata, by which. Nirvairam, non-enviousness. Yatra, where. Bhuteshu, among living entities. Na, not. Udvega, fear. Yatra, where. Paschana, any. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Whenever pure topics of the transcendental world are discussed, the members of the audience forget all kinds of material hankerings, at least for the time being. Not only that, but they are no longer envious of one another, nor do they suffer from anxiety or fear. Purport. Vaikuntha means without anxiety, and the material world means full of anxiety. As stated by Prahlad Maharaj, Sada samudvigna diyam asadgrahat. The living entities who have accepted this material world as a residence are full of anxiety. A place immediately becomes Vaikuntha whenever the holy topics of the personality of Godhead are discussed by pure devotees. This is the process of Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, chanting and hearing about the Supreme Lord Vishnu. As the Supreme Lord himself confirms, Naham tishtami vaikunte yoginam hridaye shava, tatra tishtami narada yatra gayanti madbhakta. My dear Narada, actually I do not reside in my abode Vaikuntha, nor do I reside within the hearts of the yogis, but I reside in that place where my pure devotees chant my holy name and discuss my form, pastimes, and qualities. Because of the presence of the Lord in the form of the transcendental vibration, the Vaikuntha atmosphere is evoked. This atmosphere is without fear or anxiety. One living entity does not fear another. By hearing the holy names and glories of the Lord, a person executes pious activities. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana. Thus his material hankerings immediately stop. This Sankirtan movement, started by the Society for Krishna Consciousness, is meant for creating Vaikuntha, the transcendental world that is without anxiety, even in this material world. The method is the propagation of the Shravanam Kirtanam process throughout the world. In the material world, everyone is envious of his fellow man. Animalistic envy exists in human society as long as there is no performance of Sankirtan Yagya, the chanting of the holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The Prachetas therefore decided to remain always in the society of devotees, and they considered that to be the highest benediction possible in human life. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master is kindly opening my eyes with the shining torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just in reading the purport, we can see how perfectly that section of the Prabhupada Lilamrita just exemplified this point. That whenever there is the pure devotee discussing the pastimes of the Lord, hearing, and the audience is hearing, then this atmosphere of Vaikuntha is evoked. Even in such degraded places, such as Srila Prabhupada was in, he brought with him that atmosphere of Vrindavan, that atmosphere of purity, which then was able to change the consciousness of so many people. So we'll go through a little bit of the purport. At first, the first sentence I'm sure everyone can relate to. Vaikuntha means without anxiety, and the material world means full of anxiety. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Abrahma bhuvana loka punar avartinarjuna mam upetya tu kaunteya puna janma navidyate. That from the highest planet in this material world down to the lowest, all the places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. Now this is simply a fact of life. That this material world is a place of suffering. And why is it a place of suffering? As Krishna explains, repeated birth and death is going on and on. We are in this temporary material world. Because it is temporary, that causes us distress. It causes suffering. Because the living entity, by nature, we are eternal. Because we are eternal and yet we are in a temporary place, we don't fit. It's incompatible. It doesn't work. So just as Prabhupada uses this example of fish out of water quite often. So when you take a fish out of its natural environment of the water, you can supply it with so many wonderful things. You could give it all kinds of varieties of enjoyment. And yet the fish, if it is not in the water, it is an incompatible situation. That fish will never be happy, despite whatever you try to give it. Unless the fish is back in the water, then the fish cannot feel happiness. That fish will be full of anxiety, full of struggle for existence. So this is the same situation that happens to us. Pure spirit soul, by nature, eternal, full of knowledge, and full of bliss. Yet we find ourselves in this material world, which is the opposite. It is asat, it is temporary, it is avidya, it is full of ignorance, and it is full of suffering. There is misery inherent in the material world. So that is an incompatible situation for the pure spirit soul to be in this material world. Therefore, we experience anxiety. We experience struggle. And we know that there are different types of sufferings and sufferings that we experience in the material world. We have these three, adibhautika, adidaivika, and adhyatmika. We have sufferings that are caused from the material surroundings. We have sufferings that are caused from other living entities upon us. We have sufferings caused by our own mind, our own senses. And so the living entity, as Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, it's a hard struggle for existence. A hard struggle for existence because we are actually in the wrong place. It is incompatible. So this can actually give us quite a sense of hope because sometimes in the material world, you know, our society is set up in such a way that there are so many different varieties of enjoyment. And the material world presents it to us that there is happiness here. You can find it. You just haven't tried hard enough. Or you haven't tried this particular way to get the material happiness that's definitely there. So we're getting these messages all the time. There is happiness here to be had. You just need to try hard and get it. Then when we come into contact with Krishna consciousness and this knowledge that Srila Prabhupada has given us, can give us great hope that actually when we learn that this material world is not a place of happiness, it's not actually designed to give the living entity happiness, then we can understand actually there's nothing wrong with me for feeling miserable in this material world. You know, people struggle so much. Why am I not finding happiness? Everybody else does. Or, you know, this is the picture that we get presented with. There is happiness there. Look, these people over here have got it. You need to just try harder and harder and harder, and you can get it too. And yet when we struggle for happiness, when we're full of anxiety in this material world, we tend to think the issue is with me. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I haven't quite got it yet. I just need to try harder. But then when we come into contact with real knowledge and we get that understanding that actually it's not me, it is the nature of this material world that is full of anxiety and full of suffering. And I can't find happiness here. The happiness that's presented is just illusory. It's just Maya. So this can give us great hope, actually. There's nothing wrong with me. The fact that I'm suffering in the material world is the fact that this material world is designed for that purpose. And yet Prabhupada also, he explains in one purport in Bhagavad Gita, I've always loved this explanation that Prabhupada gives. At the same time that this material world is a place of suffering, repeated birth and death, there's so many anxieties, there's so many problems. But Srila Prabhupada says, this is in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita in the purport to text 10. Prabhupada says, the Lord created this material world to enable the conditioned souls to learn how to perform yagyas, sacrifices, for the satisfaction of Vishnu, so that while within the material world, they can live very comfortably without anxiety. And after finishing the present material body, they can enter into the kingdom of God. That is the whole program for the conditioned soul. That is the program that we can follow. That's why we're here. We're here to learn how to perform yajna. Just as we're hearing in today's purport, that by performing this Sankirtan yajna, hearing and chanting and glorifying the Lord, then we can actually live without anxiety. And Prabhupada even says, even while in this material world. So what is benediction? Even while in the material world. So what does it take for us to experience the material world as a place that is without anxiety, as a place that is Vaikuntha, as we're hearing in the purport today? What does it take? Prabhupada very clearly told us what it takes to experience Vaikuntha. It means that this chanting and hearing must be going on. Shinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyantasto hivadrani vidunoti suritsatam. That Shri Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the Paramatma in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, will cleanse the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So Krishna will take over. Krishna will take care within the heart, and he will cleanse away the material desires that keep us bound within the material world. He will do that for us when we have developed the urge to hear his messages. The previous verse to this in the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam tells us how we do that. And it's by service to the devotees. It's by service to the pure devotee that we develop this urge to hear. So the Prachetas, they are praying to stay within the society of devotees, to stay in the company of devotees. And at the end of the purport, Prabhupada says they consider that to be the highest possible benediction in human life. So why is that such a benediction? Because in the company of devotees, that's when this Sankirtan Yajna goes on. That's when we have the opportunity to hear and to glorify the Lord, only in the society of devotees. And we need devotee support for that to constantly go on in life. Because we all go through so many different phases of life. You know? We may come to Krishna consciousness younger, we may come a little bit older, but it's very interesting after some time, you see how life just comes about in phases. And we're all just moving through these different phases of life. Youth, and then heading into old age. We might even be heading into disease and dwindling. You know, there's different phases of life are there. But how can this hearing and chanting, glorifying the Lord go on through all phases of life? That is only possible if we're going to keep ourselves with devotees, because they will assist us through all the phases of life. Otherwise, as Srila Prabhupada quotes in the beginning of the purport, he quotes this verse by Prahlad Maharaj. This is from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 5th chapter and the 5th verse. Shri Prahlad Uvacha Tatsadumanye Suravarya. Sorry again. Tatsadumanye Suravarya Dehinam Sada Samudvignadiyam Asatgrahat Hitvat Mapatam Griham Andakupam Vanam Goto Yatarim Ashrayeta. So Prahlad Maharaj, he speaks this verse to Hiranyakashipu. This is actually his answer to the first time that Hiranyakashipu asks him, what is the best thing you have learned in school today? As we remember in the past time, he asked that question twice to Prahlad. So this is his first response. Prahlad Maharaj said, O best of the Asuras, king of the demons, as far as I have learned from my spiritual master, any person who has accepted a temporary body and temporary household life is certainly embarrassed by anxiety because of having fallen into a dark well where there is no water but only suffering. One should give up this position and go to the forest, Vana. More clearly, one should go to Vrindavan, where only Krishna consciousness is prevalent, and should thus take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After Prahlad Maharaj said this, Hiranyakashipu laughs. He laughs at him, says, what is this talk of a young child? Take him back and teach him better. And then his demoniac teachers attempt to teach Prahlad again. But Prahlad's answer is really significant. He uses this word sumudvigna, that is full of anxieties. And that's what happens, Prahlad's explaining, that's what happens when we identify with this temporary material world and our temporary position within the material world. Either in, as he uses the example of household life, deep dark well. So if we identify with the temporary, we are full of anxiety. And the way out of that identification, or to work on removing that identification with the temporary, is through being in the association of devotees and engaging in the Sankirtan Yagya, which is what Lord Chaitanya has given us. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, this Sankirtan movement started by the Society for Krishna Consciousness is meant for creating Vaikuntha, the transcendental world that is without anxiety, even in this material world. So this is a really significant point, that even while in this material world, we can be in Vaikuntha. We have a role to play in creating the Vaikuntha atmosphere in the society of devotees. When we come together with devotees, what is our intention? What are we doing together? We should always be meditating on trying to increase the hearing and chanting together. So when we come together with devotees, we discuss topics of Krishna. We share with each other our experience of Krishna consciousness to inspire one another and assist one another and uplift one another in this path. Because the material world, as we know, gives us constant pressure. It's constant. And even for practicing devotees, that constant pressure can sometimes affect us. But the strength that is there in devotee association, when we're trying to focus on this hearing, chanting, and glorifying Krishna, that can bring us through. That is why the association of devotees is just so, so important, and something that we just can't do without at any time in this world. Just as the material energy is constant on us, our constant effort, the other way out, for creating this transcendental atmosphere of Vaikuntha, that also needs to be constant and even stronger than in the material world. Everything's always going down, it's degrading. It's a constant pressure. So our constant pressure needs to be uplifting, constantly uplifting into this transcendental atmosphere of Vaikuntha. This is Vrindavan atmosphere. No anxieties, no worries. I was just reading recently with a friend Krishna book, and we're reading the pastime of Agasura. And this is a really wonderful example. I was really struck, actually, reading this pastime at how fearless the cowherd boys were, how fearless they are. I'll just recount a little of this pastime. So I'm sure we'll remember this pastime of Agasura in Vrindavan. So Agasura was this big demon, and he laid down on the road in Vrindavan. He laid down and he extended his body. He had this mystic city of Mahima. He could expand his body as far as he could, as far as ever he could. So he extended his body up to 8 miles long. And then he took the form of a gigantic serpent, and he opened his mouth so that his lower lip was on the ground and his upper lip was in the clouds. So even if we look outside, we can see it. Today the clouds are a bit low because it's raining, but imagine this expanse of his mouth. And then he unfurled his tongue, which ran through the forest like a road. And he just sat there and waited. He wanted to swallow Krishna because Agasura's brother and sister, Bakasura and Putana, had already been killed by Krishna. So Agasura was very angry with Krishna. So he decided just to wait. So Krishna and the cowherd boys, they came along, herding their calves. It's described there were thousands of cowherd boys, and each cowherd boy had thousands of calves. Just we can't imagine the ever-expansive nature of Vrindavan. So the cowherd boys came along herding the calves, and they stopped when they saw this because they saw him, and they began to talk amongst each other. What is this? This looks like a cave. And then another cowherd boy, no, this is not a cave. Look, this is a gigantic serpent. They actually recognized who he was. Oh, that smell coming out of his mouth is the smell of intestines. I'm sure he wants to eat us. They completely recognized the danger. They fully recognized what Agasura was. He's a gigantic demon. He's a snake. He's waiting to eat us. But what was their response? They didn't shout and run away. They didn't try to hide. They didn't try to avoid it. They laughed. And they said, oh, I'm sure he wants to eat us, but Krishna is here and he won't let anything happen to us. Let's go on in. And they didn't try to avoid him at all. They just all walked in, perfectly happy with their calves. And when I was really reflecting on this, how do I face danger in my life? Do I face danger thinking, sure, no problem, Krishna's there with me? It really got me thinking, actually, that's the goal, isn't it? That should be the aim. That whatever life throws at us, whatever situation we're in, I can face this without fear because Krishna is with me. So the cowherd boys were completely in that consciousness. Krishna is here, there is no need to fear. And they just went in and waited to see what Krishna was going to do next. Isn't that also that would be such a wonderful way to approach life? What is Krishna going to do next? I'm just here waiting to see. So the boys, they're in this consciousness completely without fear, no anxiety at all. And then, of course, Krishna, as we know, Krishna entered into Aghasura, expanded himself and choked the demon and brought the cowherd boys back to life. So the cowherd boys, they had fallen into some unconsciousness due to the effect of being inside the snake and all the poisons and everything. So it wasn't as if they were completely unaffected in this dangerous situation, but they were still without fear. Such a nice, anyway, for myself, it was such a nice meditation. How to face life fearless, because we are so trusting, we are so sure of Krishna's protection that at every moment Krishna will protect me. Anyway, this is something to hold on our heads and aspire for and work towards, little steps at a time, how to increase our trust in Krishna. So then we can, and we do this in many ways, and one big way is we do this in knowledge, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, you know, that when we're in knowledge, we can face things without fear, right? And it's ignorance that causes fear. So if we take the opportunity to study and to learn and really try to understand, use our intelligence, try to understand who is Krishna, what is his personality, then we can develop our trust in Krishna, that yes, Krishna will be there for me. As Krishna's, as Prabhupada, he quotes this verse where the Supreme Lord himself says, "My dear Narada, actually I do not reside in my abode Vaikuntha, nor do I reside in the hearts of the yogis, but I reside in a place where my pure devotees chant my holy name and discuss my form, pastime, and quality." That's where Krishna is. So we can, as I mentioned, we can all play a part in invoking this transcendental Vaikuntha atmosphere in the society of devotees. We have the words of the pure devotee always here for us in Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada's lectures, the lectures and experiences of those wonderful devotees who are sincerely following Srila Prabhupada. We have so much access. So then it's just up to us, yes, to take part in this Sankirtan Yagya, learn how to perform this Yagya, so that then we can live without anxiety, because that trust and faith in Krishna has grown so strong that we no longer look out at the world as a fearful place. Vaikuntha, without anxiety. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you very much for listening. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Would anyone like to make any comment or ask a question? Yes. Mm-hmm. Benediction. Okay, so Prabhu was saying that in the association of devotees, there are three aspects: getting benediction, mercy, and blessings. Okay, that's a nice point. I'll see what I can do. I'm sure other devotees will have, you know, and elaborate more than I can. So, in the association of devotees, receiving benediction, I guess benediction and blessings quite similar. Yes, that we, in the association of devotees and by serving the devotees, then there is this natural reciprocation that devotees will want to give us their blessing, their well wishes, because a devotee's heart is very soft, and a devotee always wants to see others become elevated. So through the medium of service, then we receive the blessings and benedictions of the senior devotee. So this is this is our position, to always present ourselves as a humble servant of the Vaishnavas. And then in that way, we're receiving their blessings and their benedictions to receive the mercy of the devotees, or devotees giving out mercy, I think this is also very similar. That devotees, a very important way that devotees kind of give their mercy out to us is by engaging us in devotional service, creating opportunities. Actually, I'll just share one very small thing. I remember when I was very, very new. I was in Australia, and I was working, and I was just coming to the temple, and I had met some senior devotees there. And every time I would go to the temple, this very wonderful devotee, who I took shelter of for many years, would always have something new for me to do. So, oh, would you be able to help me with watering the plant? Oh, next week I'm going to start painting the prasadam room. Can you come on your days off from work and you can paint with me? Oh, I've started a Bhagavad Gita study group at my house on this night. And every time I would visit, there was always something new. And I was always thinking, wow, this is, there's always something very, very new and different going on here. And years later, she told me, I just did those things for you. I was trying to create opportunities for you to serve. So this is a way that devotees give out their mercy. Yes, they create opportunities for people to engage in service. Does anyone else want to share something about this? Mercy, blessings and benedictions? Yes, remnants of devotees. It's a hard one to get. You mean remnants of prasadam? Yes, that's a real blessing. It can be challenging to get that. But yes. And being able to engage in any kind of little personal service for the devotees as well. Serving devotees prasadam, trying to clean their plates for them after they have eaten. Any little way that we can engage in service to the devotees is going to open up that reciprocation. And it's Krishna's mercy that's flowing through the devotees and flowing to us once we engage in service to the devotees. And so it's just so important to be in the association of devotees. On our own, absolutely. Absolutely, it's the mercy of Srila Prabhupada that we're in ISKCON. It's the mercy of Srila Prabhupada that we, at least for myself, that I know anything about Krishna. Anything. Because not from an Indian background where there was some kind of understanding. Without Prabhupada's books, I would be nowhere. Absolutely. Yes, Mataji. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mataji. That's very nice. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Take over, Prabhupada.